Roo Arcus lives in the southern tablelands of New South Wales, where he raises beef cattle, and he also spends a lot of time in the United States of America. A combination of Australian country life and American musical influences can be found in his music, including his fifth album, The Man I Am, which is out now, and I'm very much looking forward to talking to him. Hello, Roo.
G'day, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, and been listening to you for a long time. Always loved your voice and your sound and your stories as well. Now, your debut album was released 25 years ago, which seems extraordinary, and was called Station Boy. This year's
Yeah,
album is called The Man I Am. So we have the trajectory from boy to man, and I'm wondering if that was actually a conscious link on your part.
it really wasn't, but yeah, that's the first time I've sort of thought of it that way now that you've mentioned it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Because Station Boy is not available on streaming platforms, so if anyone's going looking for it, I couldn't find it, and I don't have a CD of it, so I couldn't listen to it. But obviously, it's out
Yeah,
there somewhere.
yeah, it's a wow, it's a long way from Station Boy say to the man I am now. It's and such a different sound. I was obviously an awful lot younger then, and under the influence of just people who were saying, oh, you're still trying to find your way. Still very green, still very young, Roo, and we can help find some direction for you, and maybe you should try this and sing that way and do that. So it is very different to the latter albums where it's just all me, the grown up Roo, and just doing his own thing, which I've pretty much done all my life. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting you're saying with that first album that there were, outside influences. And I guess when you're starting out, you're going to think, well, I don't necessarily know everything. I'm going to trust people. But I'm
Yeah.
interested in what brought you to that point. So at what age did you start performing and start songwriting?
It was pretty late, really, in the scheme of things for most people I know who've been in the industry or ended up in the industry. So I was about, maybe 21 or 22, had played guitar from an early age, like a lot of young teenage boys, just
Yeah.
played a guitar very badly and loudly, and drove my parents crazy, I guess. But it really wasn't until um, it was where I live down here on the southern tablelands. There's a place called Collector, and the pub is shut sadly right now, but there's a place called the Bushranger Hotel, which I used to frequent quite a lot when I was younger. In fact, I nearly kept them in business, I think, but that's a whole nother story. But we ended up at an after party sitting on someone's lounge room floor at, 3 a.m. in the morning. And I had two musician friends. One was a singer and one was a guitarist. And they had a duo called Mustang Billies. And they just said, look, crazy idea. Let's everybody in the room sing a song. So we're all sitting on the floor, and I'm the last person, and gets to me and they're like, come on, Roo, sing a song. And I'm like, well, I can't sing. They said, well, neither can we, but, it's your turn and you're not getting out of it. So all I could think to sing was the chorus to Forever and Ever, Amen by Randy Travis.
Right.
Well, the singer kind of nudged the guitarist and said, I thought he said he couldn't sing. And a very long story after that, but that's kind of where it began. Had no idea I'd be in the business, no idea, no thoughts of being in the industry at all. But those guys just kind of got in my ear. And eventually, after another long story, I became the third member of the Mustang Billies. And about 12 months later, they kicked me out and said, right, see if you can do it on your own now. Well, here we are 30 years later.
You very much can do it on your own. So before that impromptu singing of the Randy Travis song, had you been singing along to songs at all, like, and just didn't realize that you had this incredible voice, or was it
Oh,
literally that you just hadn't been singing?
look, I guess I'd sing to the radio driving along. And look, I didn't even really grow up on country music. I think Dad had an old Kenny Rogers album or something, and but we just listened to whatever was on the radio. During the '70s and '80s, growing up, and just eventually I found my way to country music. And I think it was probably about the time I was working on big cattle stations and that kind of stuff here in Australia, and just started listening to the songs about the life that we were living. I guess just good country music. I know not all country music is about country living, but a lot of it is,
Mhm.
and that's what I was listening to. And yeah, and eventually started, playing that stuff and writing that stuff. And a lot of my early influences were, great American country music that came out of the '80s and into the '90s. The George Straits and Randy Travis's and Alan Jackson, Clint Black, all that kind of stuff. That what I call, that classic golden era of country music. I know everybody has their version of when that classic and golden era was, but for me, that was it, and that's what I started singing. And people often ask, why do you sound like an American. And in fact, the Americans are intrigued. They're like, "How can you talk like an Aussie and sing like a Texan?" It's just they're like, "How does that happen?" But that's just the stuff I was listening to and singing along to, I guess,
Hmm.
and started performing in my early bands. Yeah.
Now, Collector, I just drove past a couple of days ago because I
Oh,
was
really?
back and forth to Canberra. So if anyone's not sure where it is, if you take the Federal Highway from the Hume Highway or the Barton Highway, it doesn't really matter. But Collector's sort of in the middle there. But because I'm driving from Sydney, take the Federal Highway, always see the sign to Collector. There has been a cafe there for several years that
Yeah.
people stop in at. So yeah, very very sweet town. Just off the Federal Highway. So there you go, placing you for people who don't know where you are. But just
Yeah.
thinking about you saying, because suddenly you're in this band, they realize you can sing. You're in the well, not maybe not suddenly. You're in the Mustang Billies. For
Yeah.
you, realizing actually that other people thought you could sing, was that a moment where you actually started to think about yourself differently? You're like, oh, hang on, maybe I'm not a guitarist. Maybe going to be a songwriter. Maybe I'm a singer-songwriter because it could be quite a fundamental identity shift.
Yeah. It really was. Look, I think for years I just really didn't even know that that's what I was going to do. I just never really considered myself that way. And in some ways now, 30 years down the track, I still don't. I just kind of still feel like a cattleman that sings. And I don't kind of feel like I'm a musician or, you know, a, I don't know. It's strange. I don't know how I ended up in this business. But look, yeah, I think for probably 4 or 5 years, I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to get back to doing something else. I mean, I was still working. I was still working on the land at the same time as doing it, but I didn't really have a full-time job. I was just contract fencing and that kind of stuff, and just all the while, years into it, still thinking this is just not. This is like a little side hustle or a hobby or whatever you want to call it, but it really wasn't. I suddenly realized that this is actually what I'm doing, and this is what maybe God intended for me to do. And like I say, I'm still here trying to work it out and wondering what I'm going to do when I grow up. But
Look, aren't we all, Roo? Aren't we all? But I think it's also, you said I'm just a cattleman who sings. I think that's the key to it, actually, is that you are very much connected to the land. You're working, you still you're continuing what you grew up with, it sounds like, but also now you've got your own property and your own business there.
yeah,
But I think that's where a lot of the authenticity comes from, and also perhaps the drive to tell the stories is because you're living it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny, people used to say, do you get, and this is sort of years ago. I've been obviously done a lot of interviews over 30 years, but they said, do you ever get nervous doing interviews? And I said, well, no. Why would I? I said, well, you know, thinking about what to say. And I said, well, I'm not kind of, I don't have to fake anything. Like I haven't made up any stories. I don't have to remember a lie. It's just, let's just get on here and have a talk about whatever. It's just, I've never had to make anything up. So I think it is easy being genuine. And I think that's what I've always tried to do. I've People say, "How do you describe your music?" And I say, "Well, I think it's just honest. It's honest music. I don't write all my own stuff, but the stuff that I do record that I haven't written is something that I feel like still represents me or my lifestyle or my beliefs or my values." So yeah, I think I've always tried to stay in that lane. Just in my own lane and doing my own thing, kind of with my blinkers on like a racehorse, just not worrying about too much about what else is going on, but just always trying to do the very best job that I can do of what I do.
Hmm.
And maybe my wife has said in the past, I mean, she's 100% behind me and believes in what I do and why I do it, but she sometimes questions, maybe you should play the game a little more or um, play what's popular now. But I was never going to do that, and she knows that. And
Well, I
but
also think, as soon as a trend is identified, it's over. So whenever we try to chase things that are popular now, it's like, well, by the time you actually
yeah,
adjust what you're doing for it, but it is really tempting, and I'm sure, as you mentioned with Station Boy, you had other people suggesting what you should do.
yeah,
we do often think that there are other people who will know better, but now that you have your core identity, yes, I think yeah, pursuing it is absolutely the way to go.
Yeah, it's funny because there's been quite a swing, and it's been a welcome swing in my world back to that kind of more of a '90s country sound or influence right now. And even going through all the Western wear stores, and we go to 1,000. When we're traveling around Texas, and there's and I think you can probably thank the likes of Zach Top or something like that for this at the moment. But all the '90s old shirts that I've still got a couple in my wardrobe that my wife just would just wish I would throw out. But I said, I'll come back around, and here it is. It's come back in '90s country, and there's all these young guys out there trying to do and young girls trying to do the '90s country sound, and I'm saying, well, I'm still doing that '90s country sound. It's
And
time to come
and
back.
I have a lot more experience, therefore the sound is solid.
Yeah.
Um, now you mentioned Texas. This album, The Man I Am, was recorded in Texas, and I know that well, at the time we're speaking, you're not long back from Texas. So, what is it about Texas?
Oh wow. Well, I think it's the first place I ever went to in America. I never really thought I'd end up in America, but about 13 years ago, I did. Me and a buddy who lives not too far from here, out at a little place called Crookwell. We wanted to go and see George Strait because he's kind of, he's the king, and he's the you know the one that we look up to the most and listen to the most. So we thought, let's go to San Antonio in Texas because George is doing his Cowboy Rides Away tour, and this is a number of years ago now, and obviously 13 years ago, thinking this is the last time we'll ever have the chance to see George Strait play live. Basically San Antonio is the closest to his hometown. So, and it was the end of it was a 2-year tour, and we saw the last show at the end of the first year, the only one that was going to be basically his hometown. So the atmosphere was just incredible. And so at that same time that we decided, let's go to Texas, I had just released This Here Cowboy, and it was getting some attention in the United States. And, it's just some nice comments from people. And it's a couple of songs were getting a little airplay in Texas too, which was great. CMA Fest was on right after George's concert. So I said to a boot sponsor I had here at the time in Australia, I said, look, is there any chance, anyone, anyone in Nashville that might be able to get me onto a stage for CMA Fest? I mean, I've never been to America before. I'm like, hey, can you get me on a stage at CMA Fest in America? And he said, well, actually, we do have ties to Durango Boots, and they have a Durango live stage at the CMA Fest. So next thing you know, yeah, I'm booked to do a show in this brand new building that they were just opened up that year at CMA Fest. I opened up a little CMA Fest book, and there's my name, and I'm like, wow, this is surreal. But so always flying into Texas, going to Nashville, and I've done stuff up in Utah and Arizona and all over the place, and but I just keep coming back to Texas no matter where I go,
Hmm.
and I feel very comfortable, and I did right from the get go. Just felt very at home in Texas, and I think my music is most at home in Texas. Obviously there's a lot of Australians living in Nashville, a lot of artists and producers and musicians, and wonderful people who are doing great things. And they're like, come to Nashville, Roo, and join the Aussie crew over here. And I'm like, no, Nashville just ain't for me. It's a little, I don't know. It's a hat that don't fit. So, Texas is really where I feel most at home. And I think even the Texans say that. Texans who have been to Australia say, wow, it's just like going to one big Texas, going to Australia. And Texans and Aussies are very, very similar people and similar minded, very friendly. I don't know. What can I say? I love it.
Yeah, and you love it so much, you put a song on your album called Lonesome for the Lone Star State.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we thought we'd drop that out as the first single, as it basically was an all Texas project. I'm really trying to get my foot in the door there, and I've definitely got a foot, halfway through the door at the moment, and got some great people behind us over there now. And the TCMA, the Texas Country Music Association, has really become like a family, and they've kind of adopted me, which is great. I've got a family in a little place called De Leon, which is about an hour and a half southwest of Fort Worth, and I mean their last name is Upshaw, Sam Upshaw. He's got a radio program over there as well, and that's where I met him years ago. And look, that's where I live when I'm over there now, and probably about I've spent nearly half the year over there this year, I want to say, and yeah, he calls me the 37th Upshaw. No, they've really become family, and I don't know what it is. I mean, I love it here in Australia, and I've been doing it here for a long time in Australia. So I don't want people to get the idea that I'm abandoning Australia, but I am one of those people that are always looking for a new mountain to climb, and I
Right.
just think, a couple of years ago, I thought, well, Roo, you're in your 50s now, and how many years realistically have you got left to do this thing?
Mm.
And I'm just fortunate that, or stupid enough that I've survived this long in this business. And I just thought, Texas, I want to have a crack at it. It feels like the right fit.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm doing.
Well, and I was thinking also when you were talking about CMA Fest, I thought it's a great example of something that I like to say which is if you don't ask, you don't get. You asked if anyone could organize you onto a CMA Fest stage, that happened. And I think also you just saying you're always looking for another mountain or a new mountain to climb. I think
Yeah,
that's that relentless energy that actually keeps you making music, like keeps the albums improving, like keeps you looking for different songs, keeps you
yeah,
singing so that your voice, can actually stay performing these songs. So I love that energy, and therefore, if it takes you to Texas for half the year, that's what it does.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm still, I think it comes across. People say it when they, when we're doing an interview like this, or if I'm performing somewhere, people go, you really love what you do, don't you? And I said, yeah, I really do. I mean, I have to. It's a hard slog. It's a tough business to be in. I liken it very much to being in the cattle business here, and dealing with great seasons and droughts and all kinds of issues, things that you come across. But I always say I'm in two businesses that keep me broke, and that's cattle and country music. And you've got to do both of them because you love them. I mean, that has to be your why. If you want to get rich, if you want to make a small fortune out of cattle or country music, start with a large fortune.
Right.
you have
Yeah.
to love
Well, yes, and also both jobs require you to work 7 days a week because primary producers do not tend to have days off.
it. No, it's been a real challenge to traveling away, and well, it's always been a challenge traveling away with music, but now traveling overseas and being away for lengthy amounts of time. Fortunately, I have a wonderful wife who just got to travel with me for the first time in 5 years, actually, and our first trip away together on our own, no kids, no tour groups, no band. Our first time since our honeymoon 25 years ago. So we just had an awesome trip. But it is a struggle, and Sue's always here at home. You know, looking after things. She's more than capable of seeing to the cattle and all that kind of stuff. Of course, I try and do as much of the heavy lifting as I can before I go away, and when I come back, we try to line things up. But you know, she's just been great. She's always been happy to do it. She loves doing it. People often say to me, "Oh, you're terrible. You're always running away and not taking your wife with you." And I'm like, she doesn't want to come. She's happy here. I had to drag her away, kicking and screaming on this trip, and I mean, she loved it. We had a great time, and but you do sort of get caught up in that momentum of just the day-to-day stuff, and there's no other way. You just have to do it. Fortunately, my daughter was able to come up and look after the place while we were away, and it was just a good time of the year. We've got reasonable rain. Our cattle numbers are a little low at the moment, which is not great, but our cattle numbers are low, and there's enough grass for us to go away and just leave it up to Katie to look after things.
Right, yeah. Now you mentioned tour groups, and you do have something called Arcus Adventures. I was
Yeah,
looking up on your website, and this has
yeah,
been going, I think, since 2016.
yeah. That's right. Well, I think 2017 was when we first ran the tour. 2016, I was booked to do a festival in southern Utah in a little town called Kanab called the Western Legends Roundup. And I mean, they wanted us there by hook or by crook. So what it was, they said, look, Roo, we've kind of got, all our artists, but we're going to have you here. And look, we don't have a lot of money to pay you, but we are going to supply you with a band and accommodation and meals, and we'll fly you over and all that kind of stuff. And this is great. I was happy to, basically do it for nothing anyway, just to have that chance and, experience to do that. they said, what we would love for you to do is if you would love to just hang around for maybe an extra week, we would love to show you our little neck of the woods. Well, our little neck of the woods is places like the North Rim of the Grand Canyon, Lake Powell, Bryce Canyon, Zion National Park, just some of the prettiest desert country that you've ever seen in your life. It's just amazing. And I came home and knowing that I was going to get booked for next year's festival, I came home and said to my wife, I got another crazy idea. And she's like, oh my God, what now? And I said, well, all those people are always joking and saying, hey, Roo, can I carry your guitar? Can I carry your suitcase just so I can come with you? I've been saying it for years. And I said, well, why don't we do that? I think I'd like to take some people back to this festival next year and show them around this amazing country that I've now seen. And she's like, yeah, you're crazy. Well, we ended up doing the country music cruise here in Australia. And I guess it was just the perfect clientele because it was people who love country music, people who love to travel and have the time and the money to do it. And I told them about my crazy idea. And basically, 3 months after my crazy thought, I'd sold out the first tour to Utah in 2017. And, small groups. So they're very, very different. It's not a busload. It's just me. I'm driving you around. I'm showing you the little places. Yes, okay, if I'm going to that neck of the woods, we'll go to, Las Vegas or LA, but I need to travel through. Everything else that I show you is going to be something that you've never heard of and would never think to go to. So my tours are very different. They're small groups. They're kind of boutiquey. We stay in amazing places, and I show you stuff. We go. We went mule riding on the North Rim of the Grand Canyon. We've been riding horses down in Texas. We've just done sleigh rides in the snow. We've been on steam trains up through the mountains in the snow, and just so much stuff. I could sit here and talk to you all day about all the amazing stuff that we do, but it's really it's the only place if you want to go and do something that's really, really different and unique. I can't think. I don't know of anyone else who does it. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
I've even had Americans come and do the tours with me. They're going, wow, this is crazy. We've got an Australian showing us around our own country, and he knows more about it and knows these little places that we've never heard of, and this is just crazy.
And did I see that you're doing one to Colorado for Christmas?
We unfortunately I didn't quite get the numbers, even though I say we only have sort of small groups this year for whatever reason. I don't know. There's a little bit of bad press about America going around at the moment,
Sure.
and it's there's people who think you're going to get pulled up at the airport and you're not going to get through. You're going to get sent home, and all this crazy stuff that just scare tactics. I think we've been seeing things about America that's made people go, well, why would you want to go there at the moment? And I mean, I've lived half the year there, and it's just been amazing. The people are happy. It's safe. In fact, the tour group that I had with me away for a month said they felt safer everywhere we went than if they were in, say, Melbourne. So it's safe. It's fun. People are happy. Don't be scared to come to America, and especially with me, because I'm going to take you to all the great places and keep you just as safe as possible.
Well, people can keep an eye on your website, I'm sure, to find out what next year's Arcus
Oh
adventures
yeah,
may
I
be.
got some ideas for next year. So yeah, keep an eye
Now,
on that.
you did mention, the very real challenges of running a property and being a primary producer. One of those challenges was that last year you had a fire and you lost some farming and musical equipment. Now, there's a song on the album called Just an Old Shed, and I'm guessing that's about that. But
Yeah.
it sounds like, but I don't know if your album was already underway, but I would imagine it set you back a bit.
It really did. I mean, when that fire happened, I was in Houston. And now that was, I want to say that's early. No, that was October. That happened late October, and I had a tour going, and I got a message because I always turn my phone off at night, and I turned on my phone in the morning and had a message from my wife that said, ring me as soon as you get this message. I went, oh, what's happened? And something bad must have happened. Yeah, so and then as soon as I rang her, she started sending me photos of, there was and video of the shed on fire, and I'm like, wow, what on earth happened? Well, one of our vehicles had caught fire for no particular reason at all, and and I hadn't been driven for a couple of days, so I wasn't sitting there hot and driven through the paddocks or anything like that. But it just decided it was going to catch fire. And it's our main shed. You know, we had motorbikes and we had 3 or 4 vehicles in there, all our sort of, saddle gear and tack, and everything you could possibly imagine. All our farm chemical, all our fuel, uh, just I don't know, everything, all the stuff you've collected over 30 years. We were also renovating, so we had a lot of stuff out of the house stored in there.
Right.
Our kids who have just sort of moved out of home, we had all their stuff or most of their stuff stored in the shed. So it was everything. It was stuff. It was all our work tools, everything that we needed. Not everything we needed to run the farm because we did have another shed with other machinery and stuff in there. But there was the stuff that really, sort of hit home going through because we spent months, just Sue and I, just going through it all ourselves, sifting, basically, literally sifting through it, and hammers and chisels. We had everything stored in plastic boxes on shelves. It was, neat as a pin, so really
Nice.
well sorted. And all that stuff just melted, just fell on the floor, and just what didn't burn just melted in this big blob of plastic, and literally just hammered and chiseled, going through, just hoping we'd find anything that we could salvage. I think one of the only things I did find was there's like this little tiny little box that my daughter had some, like 3 pieces of junk jewelry in it.
Oh,
But you're going through stuff that's, it's Father's Day cards and pictures they drew in or painted in, preschool and kindergarten, all that stuff that you just sort of hang on to. And photos were in there. We did save some photos, but that's the hard stuff. Yeah, we lost probably, somewhere in the order of $800,000 or $900,000 worth of stuff in that shed. With probably, what was the shed insured for? $59,000 or something. Yeah, so there's irreplaceable stuff in there. Yeah, but all that stuff that the kids made, that was pretty tough to go through, and all their burnt old teddy bears and things like that. And like the song mentions, it talks about, my wife used to show cattle and horses, and she'd had boxes of ribbons and that sort of stuff that she'd won, and just all that kind of stuff. My very first guitar was in there. All our merchandise was in there. I don't know. I could tell you all day all the stuff that was in there. So
yeah.
just unbelievable. So that was a heck of a blow, right? So I was coming home from Houston. I did get home. I had to finish out the tour. I got home, and I had already had plans to go back into the studio. So from me getting home, I had 4 weeks, I think, maybe less, that I had to turn around and go back to Texas and go to the TCMA Awards and performing at that weekend and going to the studio. Well, at that point, we were going to record an 8-track album, and I had maybe 3 songs that I was ready to run with, that I was going, these are absolute. I had a few sort of sitting on the bench, but how am I going to do this? Come home, deal with that. My wife wasn't in great shape when I got back, and then I had to tell her I'm going away again. My producer in Texas, Chad Molden, said, "Hey, Roo, look, it's understandable, man, if you want to just schedule it to another time." I said, "Well, mate, I've lost so much right now, and I've already paid for the ticket to come across, and I can't afford not to come because just the price of the airfare alone is I can't give that up. We've got the studio time booked, and let's just do it." Well, I got to Texas 2 days before the Texas Country Music Weekend, knowing that 5 days later I was going in the studio. Now I'm not one to sit down and write. Go, oh, today I'm going to sit down and write a song. I don't do it that way. I'm out here, doing something, fencing or in the machines, and a song will hit me, and I just stop what I'm doing, and I start working on it, and I write it down or whatever, or the ideas. So now I was in a position where, right, okay, Roo, you've got years of song ideas on your phone. Now is the time to get serious and get to writing. And I did. I sat there on this little ranch there in De Leon in Texas, and I just went to writing. And I had no idea whether they were good, bad, whatever songs. I get up to Gladewater in East Texas, and I said to my producer, I said, "Look, I've done this. Have a listen to these songs." He's like, I said, "I don't know if they're good, or I don't know what to think of them, and they're too fresh." And he said, these are really good songs. And one of them was Just an Old Shed, which was pretty tough. It was almost therapy, I guess, in a way, to write that song.
Mhm.
But then to get in the studio and then sing that song, and I've never sung that song live yet.
Right.
That could be a test when that day comes, because there's a lot of emotion in that song.
Yeah. But I
Uh,
think
so
there are, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, but I did say to my producer, even just before I left Australia, I said, look, out of an impossible situation as it seems, maybe something really great's going to come of it. And in some ways, I think it did, because I think this is probably at least up there with my best album, if not my best album that I've ever made. I'm really, really happy with it. I think the production that Chad and the musicians that I had on the album were just amazing, and it's possibly more of a Roo Arcus album than ever before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it did seem listening to it that it was a collection of things that are representative of you and also important to you. And so it's really interesting to hear that some of those songs came in so late, because it seems like almost with what had happened with the fire, that everything had been literally stripped away, and
Mm,
and therefore you were just open to depicting who you were, and I guess for you also, what the things that were important were the forefront of your mind because of what had happened. So it was
mm.
right, the channel's open, everything's coming out, and here are all these parts of me, and then now let's record them. So you didn't even have time really to edit yourself in terms of thinking, oh, maybe I don't want that on the album. It's like, nope, it's all here. Producer
That's
says
it.
yes, we go.
Yeah, that's right. And like I said, those songs weren't. It wasn't like I could come back to them a month later or 6 weeks later and revisit them and go, oh no, I don't really like that line, or maybe I could change this. But I've never been that way either. I've pretty much just written a song and gone, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
And that's just a moment caught in time. Okay, let's put it over there. I don't like to come back and try and make it better. Maybe change a word or two. And I've never been to. I see these songwriting seminars that you can do and workshops, and I've had plenty of opportunity to do that here in Australia and in Nashville and those sort of places. And then I thought to myself, I don't think I want to know how to
Right.
songwrite. I don't want to be sitting there thinking, oh, I should put a bridge here, or maybe that, I've got. I don't want to know how to structure it. I just think to myself, that sounds good to me,
Mhm.
um, and that's how I want it to stay. I don't want to think too hard on it. I don't want to
Well,
think formulas.
yeah, and it's arguable that you don't need to be told how to do it. You have been doing it for 5 albums now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now, the single at the time we're talking is "The Apple Didn't Fall Far," and there is a line about your son in the first verse that goes, "That boy is having too much fun," and then it's pointed out that the same could have been said of you. The second verse is about how like your wife and daughter are. I'm wondering if your kids like the song.
Oh, they love it. They love it. My son just, he just kind of smiles at it, and my daughter, she knew exactly. I mean, she said, "That's me and Mum in the kitchen, isn't it?" I went, "You picked it, Katie. It's exactly." Man, she knew it, so she got it straight away. My son got it straight away. He knows. Unfortunately, he sort of became in the last couple of years, and this probably started 2 or 3 years ago when he started becoming mates with, like the sons of my old mates around
Oh,
here,
right.
and they'd go. I got a friend of mine, Pete, over there, halfway to Collector, and he starts telling my son stories about, your dad was pretty wild back in the day, and this story and that story, and I'm like, Pete, you haven't done that yet. He's just getting his license, and then I sort of had to admit to a few things, and I was pretty wild back when I was my son's age. He's exactly the same as me. He's very, he won't take a backward step on anything. He's hell on four wheels. Yeah, so I want to kind of get, I'm supposed to be the parent and get mad at him, and my wife's going, tell Will this, that, and the other, and I'm like, how can I get mad at him for doing all the same things that, hell, I think I even did better. And now I want to kind of pat him on the back, not, you know, not go crook on him. So, he's up in the Northern Territory right now. I spent a lot of time up in West Queensland, a little bit of time in Territory, but mostly West Queensland and West New South Wales, working on big places. He's up there right now in the Northern Territory, working on a cattle camp. I mean, he's me all over. God help us. I mean, there's two of us.
Is he interested in music?
No, no, he's smarter than me.
Okay. Well, I don't think we'd say that. Now, I'm actually curious because you mentioned the before the fire, as you were thinking about playing that album, that you said there were some songs that you had on the bench. You had three that you were ready to record, and then some that were left that have obviously now been left behind. Do you think you'll ever go back to them, or are you an artist who just thinks, okay, once I've made my commitment to these songs, I'm moving forward, I'm not going back to that vault?
No, I used to think that way. I thought, well, if it didn't end up on the album, well, maybe we'll just leave them alone. I know a lot of artists do that. But then, well, the previous album to this, Tumbleweed. Well, let's go back to 2014 when we did Cowboys and Sunsets album with Jerry Salley over there in Nashville, and there was a song that we thought absolutely was going to be on that album, and it was Tumbleweed. And for whatever reason, it didn't end up on there. I think we just wanted a different pace of song, so we ended up cutting something else, The Shots You Never Take. And then when I went to make the next album with Tim Crouch over there, I said, look, Tim, here's a bunch of songs. But I said, here's one that we didn't record on the last album. I said, I just wouldn't normally do this, but I said, can you just take a listen to this song? And he's like, Roo. He said, man, we got to cut that song. Well, it ended up being the title track, and did really well for us. And also, there's a song on this album that when I cut This Here Cowboy back in 2012, one that Jerry Salley had written called You Can't Burn a Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And it was supposed to be on This Here Cowboy 13 years ago.
Right.
So, and every time I made an album, I was like, all right, we'll do it this time. We'll do it this time. For whatever reason, we didn't. And, when I was looking for songs for this new project, and it wasn't just because I was going, oh, heck, I don't really have enough songs. It was just like, here's my chance to cut this song. It makes sense. It talks about Austin. It does mention Texas. And back in 2012, we're a little bit more reserved about, let's not make it sound, even though I've got a very American sound, let's not really mention names of places. Let's not go down that road. But now here we are, doing my own thing anyway, and not worrying about all that stuff, and trying to do something in Texas now anyway. So this is the perfect time to bring this song out of the vault. And I think it's come up great, and I'm really happy that we recorded it.
And it does absolutely fit with the other songs. Now, Jerry Salley, some people will know because he's worked with Christy Cox. He's a bluegrass performer quite a bit. And Tumbleweed, the title song you mentioned from your last album, is a lovely song. So I am surprised you didn't record it earlier, but it obviously belonged on that album.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Roo, as previously mentioned, primary producers don't get a day off, and you are sitting in your
sitting in the gold truck,
ready to get back to work. So I should let you get back to work. But congratulations on the album, and it was great to meet you. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks so much for the interview, Sophie. It's great.